name is Codemaster Jamal, and this is my 9th devlog for my indie game Virtual Monsters. This week, I created a system for playing audio over NPC dialogue. I started messing around with particle systems for special effects, and I tested a system for the player to receive their first monster. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe to the channel as I am releasing content more and more often. I won't make the promise of weekly videos until I can get my own place, however. I am getting used to working at my job, so I'm finding time to develop and edit videos more and more often. I know it's been a while since I released a devlog for my indie game Virtual Monsters, and last time I did a devlog it wasn't too great. However, I've been working really hard this week to make some progress. As I mentioned before, you can get my new screenshots on my second channel, Virtual Monsters RPG. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on anything. Seeing how it's Memorial Day weekend, I figure I'd take the time to release a devlog. Anyhow, before we get carried away, let's get right into it. This is my 9th devlog for Virtual Monsters. To begin, I started this week by doing a few live streams. Even though not many people attended in those live streams, I spent a lot of time developing my game live. Right now, I'm focusing on getting everything for my game ready on the client side. This includes having certain systems set up such as questing and obtaining monsters. I need to have this before I even attempt to add a bunch of players into a server. What I also did during one of these live streams was test out the audio for my game. I always wanted to do voiceovers for cartoons since I was a kid, so this is actually very fun for me to do. Fortunately, I've gotten to the point in my development where I actually have quite a few people volunteering to do voices for my game, so I think that's pretty awesome too. For this example, however, I did all the voices. This is purely just to test out how voiceovers will work in my game once I get everything situated for the dialogue system. I make these voices in Audacity by recording my own voice and then applying a noise reduction, changing the pitch of my voice, adding a delay effect, and then finish it off with some reverb. And that's how I created the vocals for the NPC. Now that that was over, here was the hard part: getting the audio to sync up and play appropriately with the dialogue system. At first, I couldn't properly sync up the audio. I managed to get it to work by using Audio Source and then upgrading my dialogue scriptable object to include audio clips. I can then load this array of audio clips into the dialogue manager, which allows me to play the sound. The hard part was looping through all of the audio, but more importantly, getting the audio to play at the right time. Fortunately, I found a way to get this right by calling the play function for the audio source on the actual NPC. This way the audio is played as the dialogue is loaded into the dialogue manager, and this is how it sounds like.
Hello, my name is Helio the Cube. Wow, you look tired. Would you like to rest? Okay, well, see you later.
The next thing I did was experiment with Unity's particle system. For a while now, I've mentioned the term Virtual Soul in the dialogue of the game, hinting at some of the secrets of the world of Virtual Monsters. Virtual Soul is essentially an essence that fuels the virtual world. It's in the air, things like buildings are made out of it, and more importantly, virtual monsters are born from it. Tamers are able to use this energy to navigate their way through the virtual world. I knew that I would be getting into particle systems for a while now. In terms of game development, it's actually my weakest area. So I know that I will have to take my time with creating the virtual soul for my game. However, the more I study how to create these effects in Unity, the more confident I get with creating these effects. I know I might have to get into Unity's universal render pipeline if I want to achieve better effects, and more importantly, I will need to because a lot of battle effects I plan on having in the game will consist of using a combination of particle systems and 3D meshes. So it's imperative that I get this down, but for now, I want to move on to something else, as making particle systems can be very time consuming and I don't have all week to focus on one thing. And finally, we get to what the title of the video is about: getting your first monster. I did all of this off screen and I didn't stream it, which made me feel like I was getting more stuff done for my game off camera, but meh. Anyhow, the original idea I wanted to come up with was a quest that takes the player to the professor, and the professor gives the player a monster. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to implement my quest system this week. However, I did come up with a new NPC for giving the player their monster. Up until now, I've developed this entire game with the tamer and monster attached to each other within the same prefab. This means that all of the code from the player movement to NPC interaction has all been solely based around these two objects belonging to each other within the same object. However, for the purpose of advancing my game, I needed to get rid of this method for testing things and instead have an object for the player, which includes the tamer, and then give the same ability to add monsters to the tamer's team. Obviously, I had to make sure that the player isn't able to switch between the tamer and monster when the player doesn't have a monster on their team, and then I had to make sure that when this monster is added to the team, that everything else in the game world is synced up properly. This took up majority of my time during the week, but once it was done, it worked like a charm. Currently, the way how the Professor NPC works is that it has additional dialogue. When the player arrives at the Professor's lab, we're just going to pretend that the Professor has a lab right here. The Professor will address the player and ask the player if they want to obtain a monster. If the player says yes, the Professor will ask the player if they want a monster called Demi-Monko or a monster called Enzor. When the player makes the selection, the Professor will give either a Demi-Monko or an Enzo to the player. And that's it. You can then switch between tamer and monster and so on and so forth. At the time of this recording, I'm using a dictionary to add monsters to the player's team. However, if you don't know, you can't serialize a dictionary in Unity without some kind of hack. So I haven't been able to actually see the player's team in the inspector. In terms of development, this can be a tad bit difficult. If you've been paying attention to my Instagram or my DeviantArt page, you would know that Enzor is actually the very first monster that I drew for this game. I plan on making 3D models of this monster very soon. What inspired me to make this monster was of course Agumon from Digimon. As for Demi-Monko, on the other hand, I haven't gotten around to making any sketches of this character just yet. However, I do plan on making them sometime soon. There are plans for other starters, but for the most part, Demi-Monko is actually meant to be somewhat of a mascot for the game. Kinda similar to how Pikachu is a mascot for the Pokemon franchise. He's like an alternative starter that you can get if you unlock certain things early in the game. I won't spoil too much, and I think that it's been long enough for a devlog. I think next week I'll work on the questing system or start on things like the combat system. It's been a while since I released my devlog about game mechanics, so I would like to start showcasing some of those features I mentioned a while back. Well, I guess this will be it for now. If you enjoyed watching the video, make sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more devlogs, tutorials, and more. Keep making games. Till next time, this is Codemaster Jamal, and I'm signing out.
Season 2!